Hi everybody, welcome back to Handmade. Today we are taking on another really simple sewing project. We are going to be making scrunchies. These are so easy to make, and I'm going to show you how to add this scarf that ties on. Plus, in addition to the basic scrunchie, I will show you a bunch of ways to customize it and change it up so that you can make one exactly the way you like it. So let's get started. So here is the fabric that I'm using. I will be honest, I stole this out of my mom's fabric stash, and I feel like maybe it was used for like Wizard of Oz costumes when I was a kid, but there's plenty left over, so let's make some scrunchies out of it. This is just a basic cotton fabric. You can use pretty much any fabric that you want. You just want to make sure that it's not too slippery, like too shiny, because then it'll just fall out of your hair. So we're going to measure and cut a rectangle from this. For the example that I already made, my rectangle was 22 inches by 3.5 inches, but I feel like I want mine to be a little bit more like scrunched up, so I might make mine just a little bit longer. You can play with this and adjust it however you like. So once we have our fabric cut, we're going to fold it in half lengthwise and make sure that the right sides are together. So this is going to be the outside of the scrunchie when we're done. We're going to fold that so that that's on the inside. Now on each side, we're also going to measure 1.5 inches, and I'm just going to mark that with a pin. And then you can just finish pinning all of this together in between. All right, so now we're just going to sew a straight line on the edge of the fabric right between these two pins. So for our next step, we want to turn this inside out, but only halfway. So grab a large safety pin, and we're just going to pin that right on the end of the fabric. And then we're just going to feed that through the tube until it comes out the other side. All right, there it is. Basically, we want to line up the two edges of the ends of the scrunchie. So what we want to do is just sew a line all the way across the top of where these two ends are sitting on top of each other. And there it is, a nice sewn line to keep these tops of the tube, held together. So now you should be able to sort of open up this hole in the side and then finish turning it inside out. Okay, so now we should have a really long loop of a tube with a little opening right here. So we're going to put that to the side for a minute and grab our elastic. You'll want to cut a piece that is around 8 inches long. You can make that a little longer or shorter depending on how thick your hair is. So now we're going to grab our safety pin again and add it to the end of the elastic. And then we're going to just feed that all the way through our fabric. And this is where it starts really looking like a scrunchie. All right, so hang on to both of those ends of the elastic, and then we're just going to sew them together. I think it's easier to do this by hand rather than on the machine, and it doesn't have to look pretty because it'll all be hidden inside the scrunchie. So just put a few stitches in to keep those two ends together. So now that that's all sewn, you can kind of straighten out the scrunchie to get the elastic nestled in there. And then our only step left is to close up this hole that we left earlier. So you can just fold down the ends of the fabric to the same seam allowance that you had left when you sewed the long edge back at the beginning of this project. All right, I've got that edge all nice and clipped together, and we're just going to sew right on the edge of the fabric to sew all of that closed. So there is that final edge finished. You can see how that seam looks nice and neat all the way down. So now you can just stretch out the scrunchie to get the fabric evenly distributed. And that's it. That's how you make an easy scrunchie. But we're not done yet. Now let's bring back our fabric, and I'm going to show you how to make those cute little tails. So let me show you the trick for how to cut the tail piece without needing a pattern. We're going to lay our fabric flat and then fold it up just a couple of inches and then fold it the other way. Now we're going to mark about 3 inches up and then 8 inches over. And we want to make sure that we're starting from that corner with the 2 folds. So now that we know about where we're cutting, we're just going to cut a curve from this side all the way down to this side. So now when we open that up, we should have a long oval that looks like this. So once again, just like before, we're going to fold it in half lengthwise with the right sides together. And this time, since we want this to lay really flat and clean at the end, I'm going to press it just to get rid of any wrinkles or folds and to make sure that this fold line is really nice and crisp. So now that that's nice and pressed, you can fold it in half to find the center point, and then just mark with a pin about 1 inch on either side. This doesn't have to be perfect. You just want to kind of remind yourself where you're going to stop sewing. So now we're just going to sew along this edge and along this edge, leaving the center open. So now that both sides are sewn, you can see that we have a little hole in the middle here. So we're just going to carefully turn it inside out. And it helps to have a pencil on hand to help get those little corners all the way turned out. All right, so now we should have a shape that looks something like this, and we're just going to press it one more time, making sure that in this hole that we left in the center, make sure that these edges stay folded in at about the same seam allowance as what you sewed on the sides. So now, in order to keep that opening closed, we're just going to sew right across that opening here, and then we'll basically be done. All right, so that is our scarf finished. You can see how we closed that opening with just a nice neat line of stitches. So the only thing left to do is to bring back our scrunchie and then tie the scarf onto the scrunchie. All right, and there it is. You can play with this and adjust it a little bit to make it look however you want it. And now we have made this really cute scrunchie with the tails attached. Plus, since the scarf isn't sewn on, you can take this on and off depending on whether you want to wear it that day. Okay, so these are so cute. But I do want to show you a few little variations that you can do to really continue to customize them. So to make a scrunchie that's really full and voluminous like this, you're just going to make the initial rectangle a little bit bigger. So here is what I used for this one. This rectangle is 5 inches tall by 28 inches long, and I used a 6.5-inch piece of elastic. And look at how full and pretty that turned out. I love this one. You can also play with making the ties different sizes. So for this heavier fabric, I made it a lot smaller. And then for this lightweight fabric, I made a really, really big one. And once they're tied on, you can see how by using the exact same method, we can get completely different looks. And finally, you can also play with changing the shape of the scarf. So for this one, this is the shape that I cut out. It looks sort of like a large banner shape. And after turning it inside out, I sewed all the way around the edge to really define the shape that I was going for. And look how cute that turned out. There are just so many different variations that you can make with this project. So I'd love to know if you've ever made a scrunchie before, and if this is a project that you think you would want to try. What color do you think you would make? What fabric would you use? Tell us all about it in the comments right down below. So make sure to subscribe to Handmade for new DIY videos every single week, and I'll see you all next time.